Everyone. Thank you for coming back. We're very privileged to have today with us Inger Andersen. Inger, thanks so much for joining us today and for your leadership of the UN Environment Program. You bring a very interesting sort of a wide stakeholder perspective, having been the responsible for sustainable development at the World Bank Group, having led the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, and today responsible for the Global Environmental Agenda as UN Undersecretary General and Executive Director of UN Environment Program. So I know you're very keen on seeing the finance industry step up as a partner in sustainable development, but you also have high expectations for what this means. And therefore, with that, we're really looking forward to your views on what it takes for the sustainable finance community to really deliver. Over to you.
Well, thank you very, very much for this opportunity. And really, it's my pleasure today to address everyone on the importance of making the finance sector a real force for positive change. In the last day and a half, we've heard important insights on the challenges facing the finance sector, but we've also heard about the very, very real opportunities for shifts to both long-term sustainability and to long-term profitability. And in this context, I want to really commend my colleague, Amina Mohammed, DSG at the UN, Christine Lagarde at the CBD, and Kristalina Georgieva at the IMF for their leadership and inspirational commitment. We need the finance sector to fully utilize the knowledge and leadership of the full society and this full spectrum of talent. And that, obviously, includes women. But women are generally poorly represented in senior positions across the industry. So in this context, let me be unequivocally clear. Balanced boardrooms, both in terms of gender and diversity, perform better. Leadership is needed to help get us there, so please, let's get it done already. But now, let me go back to COVID. The COVID pandemic has shown us in stark detail how exposed to shocks and risks our economies and societies are. Risks that those of us working in the environmental field have been calling out for some time now. In UNEP, we speak of the three planetary crises: the climate crisis, the nature crisis, and the pollution and waste crisis. And driven by decades of unsustainable production and consumption, these crises are destroying our natural systems upon which our economies and societies are built. We humans have altered 75% of the terrestrial surface of our planet, and we risk losing 1 million species on Earth. Climate change continues unabated. The science is clear, and yet we remain unprepared when shocks associated with these crises occur. So what do we need to do? We need to refresh our memories of the commitments that we have made already to stabilize the climate, to protect the natural world, to stem pollution, and thereafter, we need to make very real and meaningful actions to meet the goals that we have agreed. Such meaningful action also means shifting gear in the finance sector, altering investment flows away from unsustainable production and consumption patterns, no more financing of coal, deforestation-free food, fuel and fiber, a regulatory environment that limits pollution and protects our climate and nature. And all of this requires investments. Now, the initial stimulus packages in response to COVID-19 rightly prioritized health and keeping economies and people afloat. That was the right thing to do. But we must look to the future. Over the next 6 to 18 months, a further possibly $20 trillion in stimulus could happen. Let us remember that most of these stimulus packages are based on government borrowing. Are we really going to saddle the next generation with a pandemic debt and a destroyed planet? The answer has to be no. So this is the moment. Stimulus funds must go towards creating a zero carbon, nature positive, pollution free planet. And that is in which finance fuels the energy transition, a healthy planet, and green jobs. This golden opportunity with these massive amount of resources coming into the economy will not come again in the future. The good news is that some finance industry leaders have started to acknowledge the need to realign capital with sustainability, with climate stability, with regenerating our natural world, with a pollution-free planet. I'd like to offer 4 essential actions we need to make these investments count. 1. Financial institutions need to start measuring and accounting for the impacts of their financing. Simply put, the finance sector needs to do much better at measuring and communicating holistic measures of impact, both the positive outcomes of financing, like emissions reductions, and the negatives, like biodiversity loss. 2. Financiers need to set real and comprehensive sustainability targets. Investors need to treat sustainability as a key indicator of portfolio performance, not as an CSR effort. Entire portfolio and organizations need to be consistent with the SDGs and the Paris Agreement. Bits of green investments on the fringes of an otherwise dirty and toxic portfolio is not the way to go. Two target frameworks that UNEP is pleased to be involved with is the Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance, as well as the Principles for Responsible Banking. And 3, finance institutions need to follow the science. And in this context, I really commend the Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance for relying heavily on scientific inputs to set a timetable for net zero emissions in their portfolio with clear intermediate targets along the way to 2050. This alliance is working closely with the scientific community, as just yesterday committed to a greenhouse gas emission reductions in the 16 to 19% range by 2025. And 4, transparency and accountability are essential. Here, allow me to highlight UNEP's initiative, the Principles for Responsible Banking. The principles require third-party review of signatories' annual reporting, providing credibility, and also signatories are establishing a civil society advisory body, which points to the openness to receiving important inputs from a stakeholder that holds them to account. Now, following these 4 tenets will go a long way to moving the finance industry in the right direction. But we need every cent to be spent on shifting that needle on sustainability. This is not just because Earth's beleaguered natural systems need the finance industry. It is because the finance industry and its future profitability and our very own survival needs these natural systems even more. I thank you very much for this opportunity and wish you the very best in the rest of the conference. Thank you.